Welcome back to the Sport of CrossFit podcast. I'm your host, Chase Ingham, and I have two special guests with me, is Alec Zirkenbach and Kevin Ogar. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time. I know we had to mix and match some schedules, so it's very important that you guys made the time. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Chase.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so the new season has just been announced for everything. I think it was, almost a week ago, maybe last Monday. And a lot of new changes across the board, individuals, teams, masters, adaptive. And this will be the second year that we have the adaptive athletes in the CrossFit Games season, as it was their first year last year. I think it was really cool to finally have this a part of the game season. There's always been kind of a off leaderboard over the years. Kevin, you've been a part of that for a long time. What was it? Who came to you guys first about last year's season, about bringing that into the official game season?
I don't remember who the first person was. I know I got in on a conversation with Dave and who else was on that call? I can't remember who else was on that call.
Justin Berg was on it too.
Yeah, Justin Berg. I think Eubanks was on it as well. Maybe. I don't remember exactly, but they we kind of had a call and chat to see what it would look like to have us bring that up.
I thought it was really cool. Eric Rosa, the first time I heard it being a thing was it was on Talking Elite Fitness's podcast that Eric Rosa was on, that they were bringing this division into the games season. How much, Alec, I'll start with you, is what got you involved with the adaptive community in general, and then more so in CrossFit?
Yeah, I've never really intended to be involved in the adaptive community at all, but I was in the Navy, had a really bad injury in 2009. And so because of that, I have a permanent disability to my lower right leg. And my long story short is that a CrossFit community really did save my life. So I was in a really bad place, lost a lot of weight, was not socially connected anymore, and mentally really down. And rejoining a CrossFit gym really did give me a second chance at a happy and healthy life. That allowed me to stay in the Navy. But then when I got out, opened my own CrossFit gym and started a rec therapy program with the local naval hospital in San Diego. So that's how I started learning to work with other people with disabilities, and just wanted to have a safe place for them to work out. So just over time, lots of trial and error with my staff. That's how I got involved. And then, started working with Chris Stoutenberg and Kevin with WheelWOD for the WheelWOD Open, realizing there wasn't divisions for people with disabilities in the Open for competition's sake. And so started working with them and helping produce that. And then in 2017, CrossFit wanted to create a specialty course for adaptive training. So seeing, I guess, what we're doing at my gym with people with disabilities and training, started to write that course and brought Kevin on, brought Logan Aldridge on, and Chris Stoutenberg as well to write and run that course for CrossFit. So, and then ever since then, when we got kind of more into CrossFit in 2017, every year we've been asking and just, putting it up to CrossFit and saying, hey, we're ready to help do this. Like, if you give us the chance, we can produce these adaptive divisions, just give us the opportunity to. So I think eventually when they saw the growth of adaptive athletes coming into CrossFit affiliates, that just led to creating the adaptive divisions last year.
Kevin, what was the first year that we really had some well-known live competition with adaptive athletes? I remember it vividly being at Wodapalooza. I can't remember what year that was.
That was 2015 was the first year we had some visibility, and that still wasn't really a competition. It was more of a showcase to see if it was possible. That year, I know Steph Hammerman had done it the year before in 2014 by herself. She had asked if they could have like some space for an adaptive like showcase the next year. And when that happened, they contacted me. Steph and Wodapalooza contacted me about writing that programming, and then going down there and throwing down with them. And then the year after that at Wodapalooza was really kind of the jump off point for a lot of that stuff as far as visible competition. Chris Stoutenberg took over Wodapalooza programming after that with WheelWOD. But even before then, there was a handful of adaptive athletes who would take the CrossFit Open and adapt it themselves and do it with their community. I know Chris Stoutenberg did it. Angel Gonzalez, which owns a gym down in New Springs, Texas, Houston, Texas area. They were doing it for a while, and there's a couple other who were adapting the open all the way back in like I think 2012 or 2013.
Really, that far back?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember that one Wadapalooza vividly. Got to be a part of the broadcast for that. And and you're right, competition like leaderboard, scoreboard, maybe not, but it was the first time I had seen it, and it had a massive emotional impact on me that I was unprepared for. If anybody saw me in the stands, that was I had to like stop broadcasting in the middle of that because I don't know, I wasn't prepared to see that. And it was so
Well, are you talking
cool
about me in tights?
Well, no, it's like when you finally took your shirt off, I was like, my God, that man's chest is just so breathtaking. I'm going to need a moment. But, and you're right. It was almost like every, adaptation or division possible. There was a representative on the floor in so many different ways. And then how did that have any impact going forward of where the division can go, what's possible for the adaptive division in the competitive community?
Yes, and that we saw what we were missing. So in that initial one, we programmed for like upper, lower, or like basically standing and seated. Like you're either a standing athlete and here are some adaptations, or you're a seated athlete and here are some adaptations. And I think with that, we saw that there's more than just standing. There's standing upper, there's standing lower, there's neurological, there's short stature, there's visually impaired, there's a whole bunch of other divisions there. And even within seated, there's seated with hip, seated without hip. So we started over the next few years developing, Alec and Stouty and those guys just kind of developing like where we saw the impairments truly affect their ability to compete, and started breaking off into divisions based on where it was. There's a difference between your impairment causing a problem and your level of fitness causing a problem. And our real job over the last few years was determining the difference between those two things.
Okay. Specifically to the divisions, you guys get approached. You've been working on this essentially for years before it gets picked up by the game season. Is how do you pick divisions, and how did you land on? Is it 9 different ones that we have now?
There's 8 divisions.
There's 8. Okay.
Divisions. Yeah.
What was the process of figuring these divisions out?
Well, like Kevin said, all the experience of going back through Wadapalooza and all the other competitions and everybody else doing work beforehand was essentially trial and error to figure out what works best. The 8 divisions, come from, like Kevin saying, like Wadapalooza and having standing athletes all compete together and seated athletes compete together. But really, that's not going to produce a fair competition because there's so much variance in standing athletes and seated. So you start to parse those down, and it still ends up being standing and seated. So like Kevin, for seated, we have seated with hip function and without hip function. And that's the major demarcation line between those two athletes. But there's a huge swath of variance even within there. And then breaking up the standing athletes to upper extremity, lower extremity. Like Kevin said, you have short stature, vision, intellectual. That was a new addition that hadn't really have its own division before either. And then neuromuscular. So that comprises the 8 divisions. And I will say, I'm very, very thankful that CrossFit gave us those 8 divisions to even start with. I was surprised that they were allowing to have 8 new divisions. It's a huge amount of divisions to add to competition. I could have seen them just take what is used at Wadapalooza currently is just, standing upper extremity, standing lower extremity, and seated athletes.
That's all they have at Wadapalooza. Okay.
Yeah, but within that, you do programming changes to make the competition fair. So, but when you do that, and if you have less divisions and you make programming changes, it's sort of on the programming to make sure that it's fair. And it's as well educated as it is based on past experience. It's still going to be an educated guess and not really specific to people's ability levels. So having more divisions will always make that competition more fair. So those 8 divisions in CrossFit are great, but to be honest, it's still not completely fair with those 8 divisions. And the future of this could be more divisions to make it more fair. An example is upper extremity and lower extremity divisions. There's a huge difference between an athlete with an upper extremity that has an elbow joint or doesn't have an elbow joint. Like Casey Acree, who won the CrossFit Games for upper extremity.
Who's a beast,
he does,
by the way.
He is, and not to digress, but I really think if Casey had his full left arm, I think he would be a games athlete. Like that's
really
the level.
100%.
100%.
Wow.
Dude, he snatches like 245 with one arm. Shut up.
What?
Yeah, he is a beast. But him having his elbow versus Logan Aldridge or the other athletes in that division who don't have that elbow joint and can only attach at the shoulder for things, huge difference in just pure ability, not fitness level, but pure ability. The same thing happens in lower extremity. If your impairment is below knee and you have your knee joint, then you have access to your quad, your full quad, and use of that leg to actually produce power and do movements. If your impairment is above the knee and you don't have your knee joint, you lose the ability to really utilize that quad, and really that leg becomes more of like a crutch, kind of like your kickstand, and you're really only producing power mainly from one leg. So athletes in those divisions that are above the knee or above the elbow have already a significant disadvantage ability wise, and so really that division should be cut up into 2 more divisions. But we could keep doing this, keep parsing this out forever and ever, and end up with 50 divisions, and that's the way the competition would be truly fair. But we try to make it as fair as possible through programming changes.
Okay.
So like for instance, for last year with upper extremity, as much as possible when we could, we made the athletes use one arm throughout the event. So if they were doing dumbbell snatches or something, or ski erging, they had to use that same arm throughout the workout, which meant if an athlete had access to 2 arms, they weren't giving it an advantage because now they had to utilize just one arm, just like, Logan, who's an above the elbow amputee. So we can make those changes in programming and in design of the competition. But for now, we have those 8 divisions, and super thankful for those, and we'll see how it goes in the future.
Kevin, even if say there's seated athletes, you're talking about hip function and non-hip function is 2 separate. Isn't there a major difference between those that might be amputee versus not in those seated divisions?
Wow, man, you could break the seated down into more than just a couple divisions. I mean, you talk about we generally split to high and low function for like above T6 injury and below T6 injury. So like T6 down, T6 up, because that's where you start to have innervation of like midline or like core function.
Okay.
And then below or like with hip function, yes, the amputees are going to be different than those who have access to a full leg. Sometimes it's an advantage. Sometimes it's a disadvantage. I mean, the guy who's won a lot of this stuff for seated with hip for a long time, Tom Miazga has a version of cerebral palsy that he has both of his legs and has hip function, but he can't really he can't walk around them on a daily basis or do Olympic lift standing. Whereas someone like a guy named Josh Blyle, who's a double above knee amputee, who really wouldn't be in standing, he's in seated with hip. And so they have their advantages and disadvantages of like how much load, how much leverage, how much of this, that, and the other you can produce through it. So, I mean, that's the point at which like that kind of plays out in the wash, kind of like being a tall CrossFitter and a short CrossFitter. Like you're going to have advantages and disadvantages. It's not really dependent on their impairment. But hip function is a major determining factor on what you can do as far as transition time, ability to produce power, all these different kind of things that can't be made up for on a level basis just by fitness.
Okay.
I'm not going to I don't have hip function. I'm classified as a without hip function athlete.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to produce as much power or do as much without being exponentially more fit than the guys with hip function, who can be incredibly less fit and still keep up because of their ability to produce power with their hip.
And so this goes to the, Alec, as you were saying, programming, right? Being able to basically, you have a dividing line of the most impactful, we'd say, ability. And right now, let's say lower extremity, it's, Kevin, what you're saying is hip function or non-hip function is the biggest separator. And that's kind of where we draw this line at the moment.
Sort of. it's also how many people we have.
Okay.
So like we have, like I would argue that I am more similar to a with hip function than someone who is a T4, like a T4 paraplegic, like basically chest down, because they have no ab function, they have no hip function. Balance becomes a huge issue. The ability to produce power because of that becomes an issue, where they have to be exponentially more fit than the person with ab function. But the reason we don't have a division specifically for them, there's not a lot of them. There'd be like a handful of them, so it's not enough to create a division. So it's also, it's not just the categories we have, but also the categories we have to build to. I mean, I think in short stature last year, correct me if I'm wrong, Alec, we only had a total of like maybe 13 athletes, somewhere in there, and that's between men and women. There just wasn't a lot of them, and that's I mean, they're at a disadvantage. Like that's a congenital issue, not a an injury that can happen later in life. So they're at a disadvantage for numbers. But still, it's 13 people. It's 13 people, and where other divisions had like 100 plus.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying it's very challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging, the least. Specifically for, and we can't expect the adaptive divisions to grow at the level that the able-bodied or the age group divisions grow, because there's just less of a general population. There's the stat from the CDC from 2018 was, it's a quarter of Americans have a significant disability, but that could range in significance. And the way we define competition is more stringent than you would define, the CDC would assign people with disabilities. So the people that are able to compete in CrossFit competitions, I don't have a number specifically for you, but it would be far less than 20% of Americans. It would probably be closer to like less than 10%. So we can't expect the adaptive divisions number-wise to grow more. In the short stature division, there's far less people that are born with dwarfism. So we can't expect that division to grow at the same numbers either. But we do, I think CrossFit would like to see the division grow over time. And considering we've only had 1 year of official competition,
right.
I think it will grow. It will. I've told everybody, I think last year was great. This year, again, it'll be able to see athletes compete, and will be awesome. And then hopefully next year we can get more of the divisions to the actual finals in Madison or wherever the games are. But seeing that growth will be great. Like it'll be similar to, the early CrossFit Games at the ranch. A lot of people got into CrossFit training just because they saw the CrossFit Games.
Right.
And I think there is going to be a watershed moment where, people are starting to see what people with disabilities can do and the potential possibilities. And like, I didn't even know that was possible. Let me go find my local affiliate and see, and they may have that same, thing that most CrossFitters do. They see the CrossFit Games and they go to their affiliate and they're like, I want to go to the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
And the affiliate owner and coaches are like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's start with some basic learning how to squat and then see how it goes from there, But the thing is, like, the CrossFit Games are a great marketing and great way to get athletes into your local affiliates and get people with disabilities training. And that's the ultimate goal, really, is to get people with disabilities into fitness training. Because as we like to tell, there's so many barriers to entry just for fitness training. If you don't have a disability, add a disability and transportation costs, everything like that to amplify. And so, having the games display athletes with disabilities is amazing. So hope to see it just keep growing.
And some perspective on this. I mean, I think all of us on this call have been around CrossFit for long enough to remember the beginning of the Open. I mean, I know Chase, you've been around for that. And like, we are the adaptive division is the first division to ever go straight from getting their first year in the Open to their first year at the games. Usually, like, I think age group was like 2, 3, 4 years before they actually got a spot at the games and just stayed in the Open. And so I think it's a really big thing. People need to put it in perspective that we are being given this great opportunity, and that it is going to take some time to grow. Like, trust me, I've been trying to make it to the games for 14 years. I would love to have a seeded division in the games. We're not there as a sport yet.
So let's talk about last year. So last year, it was from Open directly to games for a specific amount of divisions. But when you guys were approached, what was the process? Was it, as you said, was it consulting on developing the divisions? Did you have an impact on how the Open modifications will be programmed? You guys said it's like you did that a bit when it was more of that WheelWOD Open that wasn't in conjunction with directly with the game season. What was y'all's role in developing the adaptive division last year?
Well, it started with helping them write their classification manual. So the guidance to put down the divisions and who is specifically eligible for competition in those. That's very challenging because in all the other CrossFit divisions, it's just, hey, are you this age or are you not? And then here's your division. Far more challenging for classification for adaptive divisions because we actually have to define who is eligible, and it's hugely challenging. But then we also were involved in we did give guidance on what we thought the process should be through the competition. But we're not always privy to the conversations that happen behind the scenes as far as the financial costs, the logistics, the everything that goes into running that actual competition. So Kevin and I and all of the adaptive community would love to see all the divisions have an ample chance at competing on the floor at the CrossFit Games. And I think that will happen, and I know the CrossFit wants that to happen for sure. So, but we give guidance on that, and then we actually provide the adaptations, write the scorecards for the Open.
Okay.
And then we're actually we're at the games, so we took for the games the age group programming, and then made adjustments from the age group programming for the adaptive divisions, because we were in a sense blended in with them.
Yeah.
We worked with the Eric O'Connor and Eric Preston, who run the age group competition, and we had to learn how to run a competition the scale of CrossFit. We've been doing competitions like Wadapalooza and WheelWOD Games and WheelWOD Open, but CrossFit's a different beast when it comes to everything that's involved. So we adapted those workouts and wrote those specifics, and then actually ran that competition. In the future, I think we hope we can write our own workouts and have our own programming from scratch. But using a base template of the age groups was great in that it gave us the stimulus you wanted for each event. Like, what are you testing in that? So it works just fine. And we just kind of folded in with the age groups, so we were on the same floor, the same schedule.
Yeah, that was
with
cool.
them. Yeah,
Kevin, in the Open, we said 8 divisions. How many divisions moved on from the games last year?
We had 3. So we had 8 divisions in the Open, and then we had upper, lower, and neuromuscular, both men and women. So 5 from each category go to Madison last year.
And then, you guys, you provided a lot of the, like you said, the programming, at least the consulting there, the types of divisions, what qualifies that, Alec, as you were saying, was like the things that you guys don't have a hand in is deciding what numbers go where, who gets to advance to what. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we don't need to be privy to. Like I said, like the financial stuff, how much each division costs, where they're going to do the timing for things, like all these different kind of stuff isn't our thing. That's for the Dave and his team to take care of. And so
that's not mine either, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I don't want any part of that one.
we can give our feedback and we can give our suggestions, but at the end of the day, like they have to do what is feasible, not only feasible, but also like beneficial to the sport. Honestly, I personally, this is just a personal thing, believe that if we had every division in this year, it would be more of a sideshow and less of a competition.
Okay. Is that just based off the numbers that we have participating, or maybe the level at which they're at fitness wise, maybe?
Their fitness level is there for a lot of these.
Okay.
It really is. It's not that. It's there's a lot of stuff going on at the games. You've been there, and to add every division in at this point in time would just be like trying to jam 2 pounds of crap in a 1 pound sack, and there wouldn't be a really great plan for it. So I think it would get shuffled off. Shuffled off and wouldn't be done as well as it can be in the future.
Okay, so for what it was last year, sorry, Alec, you can.
Well, I was going to say, one of the big changes that happened last year that went into this consideration was the age groups weren't in the pavilion. They were out on the North Lot Park,
right,
on the field too. So the age groups got to compete, and adaptive got to compete on the same field that individuals and teams compete. So they were on the North Lot, and in the Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
In years prior, age groups were in the pavilion, inside doing their own thing, and they were separate from the
Right.
North Lot Field and the Coliseum. And the decision was made to give those athletes a chance to compete on the same floor. That's a huge change that probably impacted some of the decisions that went into how many divisions were at the games, because that floor and that schedule is very tight.
Right.
I don't know if people know this, but the walk, like the times that people go onto the floor and come off the floor, are down to the minute.
Yeah.
And that is for the entire campus's schedule, because there's the equipment team bringing things on, there's signage team, there's the media team that has to be broadcasting. If we're on CBS or we're just live on YouTube, it has to be down to the second of when things happen. And so that schedule fills up really quickly. And I'm not saying this to say that there can't be 8 divisions competing in this manner, because there can be, for sure, and we can make it work. But there's things like those considerations that go into it that people don't understand how much and how
Right.
complex it can be,
Right.
to go into something like that.
That's true. And it was I think it was a good, there were some pros and cons, because, when they were in the age group pavilion, the age groupers were tucked away and not a lot of attention was drawn over there, maybe from the crowd. They did cover it. And then when you put them on the main floor, that's super cool, right? You're out in front of the main crowd. You're on the competition floor that everybody else is. But that limits the schedule so much more because of working around individuals and teams. There's only 2 competition floors to work with, as opposed to having your own entire facility, basically, to run whatever you want in the course of that day. So as cool as it is to be on the same floor and get in front of the same people, which I think was a pro, the con was, like you said, is that it extremely truncated a time schedule to get all of those athletes in. And that's another reason why the age groupers are dropping down to 10, because of those schedule constraints. So, I mean, they're learning on the fly. So as we look back at last year for the games specifically, and Kevin, I'd like to start with you, is how was it for you being there? Like I said, you guys are both on the floor, basically the head judges of the adaptive division there in Madison. What was it like for you having that out there at the CrossFit Games?
It was a steep learning curve. Like Alex said, we've run a lot of these kind of competitions before, but nothing really at this scope. Just a lot of people, a lot of things, like down to the minute type of stuff. And so there was a steep learning curve there. It was awesome to be down there. Awesome to watch these athletes just go at it, and really learn. We learned a lot. At least I know I did, from Eric Preston and Eric O'Connor, on how things are going to be run, how they want things run. Just a lot of that kind of stuff. I also had a hard time because I had to be very impartial. My wife was also competing in the neurological division, so I had to,
That's right. You did. You had to not cheer from the sideline.
Oh yeah, we didn't even stay in the same hotel. We were
just wow,
separate. Like for like a week and a half, we got off the plane to Madison, just went our separate ways, and didn't see each other again until the end of the games.
See you Sunday night.
Yeah.
What was that like watching? Did you watch her compete?
No, actually, I specifically positioned myself on the opposite side of the floor when she was competing, noting that we had like Eric and Alec there to help me watch. Like, I'd be lying if I didn't glance over every once in a while, but I specifically put myself in a place where I had no effect on her end of the competition.
Okay. That'd be hard, man. Because, I mean,
it was hard.
Wise out there competing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Alec, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I guess it was just incredible to be out there. We're doing a job and running the competition and making sure things are on time. There's the right weight set, everything's in the right place. But then every once in a while, I catch myself just being like, just at all. And we're in this community. We see these athletes do these things all the time. To us, it's normal now to see people lifting with one arm and doing amazing things or whatever. But it's just incredible, and it gives me goosebumps right now to think about it. And the adaptive community is even a more tight-knit community than the CrossFit community at large. And so just to see those relationships building, and all the upper extremity men were all just broing out all the time. And, and you always see CrossFit athletes cheering on other athletes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, but in the adaptive competition, everybody was cheering on everybody else, because It was just such a monumental event. And I think it'll always be that way. But, we hope in the future it's just people seeing people with disabilities compete on the competition floor. We would like that to be kind of like a normal experience. And they're just at all at the fitness level of these athletes, and not at all at them, let's say, like overcoming a disability. But it was just incredible. It really was. And just thankful to CrossFit for the opportunity, and hopeful that it keeps to grow and to give everybody an opportunity to be on that floor, in the Coliseum or wherever the games are under those lights. That's what we'd love to see for sure.
Now, I thought it was super special. It was really cool to see that out there. It's just like incredible performances across the board. And Alec, like you said, it wasn't because this person had this thing and they're doing this thing. It's like, look what this person is just doing, period. Like that was the most fun part. By the end of the weekend, it wasn't relegated to someone's disability in their performance. It was just their flat out performance. And I thought that was a really cool way to showcase the ability of these athletes. And so, you get through a year. Eric Rosa came on and said, hey, listen, give us some grace, because we are going to screw things up, or we're going to do things that we thought was the way to do it, and then learn our lesson and get better. And with that same, theme, what lessons did you guys learn from last year's first year? I can't imagine the learning curve that has to be involved here. Going from an open to a CrossFit Games in one season for the first time. What feedback or lessons did you guys take away from last year that you're looking forward to implementing this year?
I think a big one for me is just preparedness. Like I'm used to writing programming for adaptive athletes. I do it all every single week. Used to coaching that kind of stuff, but the level of like attention to detail for every single workout, for every single heat, for every single like walk on, walk off is just something that I don't want to say I wasn't expecting, but I just don't think I was aware of. And I think knowing that this year going into it, being able to go over things a few more times, talk about things a few more times, and really be prepared for that level will be great.
Alec?
Yeah, on the competition floor, the level of detail that CrossFit requires for walk on, walk off times, and matching it with media and all the schedule that's going on the campus. That was the biggest learning, and understanding that planning ahead for next year, like we'll have to give the neuro division when they're competing, we need to give them maybe an extra minute or two to get off the floor. Because I don't know if people see on TV or YouTube when they're watching, but when the competition ends, there's most likely another division or heat coming right on the floor.
Yeah.
And the equipment team is there, the signage team is there, the athlete control is there to get the athletes off, and more than likely there's a new heat starting in 2 to 3 minutes after the last one ended. For some of our divisions, specifically neuromuscular, they're going all out in these events, and they're most likely going to have a neuro crash, overheat, and then give it all in that event. Everybody knows what it's like to do Fran or do an event all out, and then you completely crash, and it's hard to get up and move, and you're flailing around on the ground. If you add something like a neurological condition, that's a very big health issue, and then just difficulty getting those athletes and their equipment off the floor. So that was a learning curve to understand. We need to give the athletes a little bit more time to get on, to set their equipment, make sure everything's right, and to get off. So we'll adjust that just a little bit for sure, and just to make sure that the competition is as fair as possible.
Okay.
For instance, on the North Lot, that turf field, most all the events are scored by a chip timer, and so most often you start by the Zeus rig and you progress across the floor down to the finish line. Well, some divisions like lower extremity and even neuromuscular, getting across that space, if you do all of your work by the Zeus rig and then expect everybody to sprint finish, which is a great way to finish for most divisions. It looks good, it's exciting to see athletes sprinting to finish, but that may not be fair for some divisions to do. So we'll have to make some adjustments. And like Kevin said, if when we add the seeded divisions and other divisions to that, we're going to have to think through how we score those divisions and how things are set up to make sure they're fair, and so we make sure we get proper scoring. The judges do a great job. The judges will write down a time for when they finish their stopwatch, and we can back that up with the chip timer. But sometimes those don't line up. Maybe the chip timer malfunction, which doesn't usually happen, but we have to double check, and we have 2 points to verify. Well, if we go to just a judge's stopwatch, now we're losing some redundancy in that scoring system. So we have some things to work through to make sure we're prepared for next year and for when the other divisions do come on the floor as well. But the other challenge too ahead of time is just making sure classification is a little bit more stringent. It can be. We're working on it now to make it a little bit more objective and not as subjective.
Okay.
In that, CrossFit would like the classification process to be done as a self-evaluation and not be done like you may do in the Paralympics through an actual physical classification process with a classifier
Interesting.
who takes you through range of motion, and you go to an appointment and you do a classification.
Wow.
That adds a barrier. That adds a barrier to entry.
Yeah.
And with the Open, we want that to be as inclusive as possible. But the Open is also the first stage to competition,
Right.
and you need to have athletes there that actually are eligible to move on to the next stages of competition. So we're going to make that better. We're going to make it more understandable and easier to read, so that there isn't misclassifications. there was a lot of people, let's say non-adaptive people, signing up for the adaptive divisions, just not understanding.
Okay.
Like short stature division.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shorter athletes out there that signed up for the short stature division that are not short stature athletes per the division and the classification manual. So we're hoping to do that, alleviate that issue, and help through the registration process too. I know the IT team and Dave Eubanks, who works in scoring, and Boz are aware of this, so we can make the registration process more clear to see if you are eligible to compete in the adapted divisions as well.
Alec, that was specific to the Open. Kevin, anything from you that a takeaway from the Open last year that you are looking to hopefully improve upon this year?
My placing?
Aren't we all, right? Aren't we all?
No, I think overall, I think last year went off as well as we can expect for a first year. I think having it a second year and being a little more clear, like Alex said, on classification, so we don't have people who have temporary impairments but aren't adaptive athletes jumping in on the adaptive division. I think that one's going to be a huge one. As far as like the workouts and everything went, I think everything there went really well. I think it really did. I mean, they have a nice system set up for a little bit of us to jump in there and just plug some of these adaptations in.
Okay.
So I think the other hard part is just like the scoreboard, like just making sure that we can go on there and take a look at the scoreboard, make sure that scoring is correct on our end.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alec, I like what you said is trying to get better. And that's really the only thing we can hope for as we go from year to year. I mean, CrossFit still isn't perfect, and it's never been perfect, but it continues to get better because of lessons learned. And it's better, not perfect. And I think most people accept that. Some don't. And as far as getting better, I feel like this year, last year was open directly to the games for only 3 divisions, right? And so last year after the Open, they crowned the fittest in divisions that did not make the CrossFit Games. This year, we have an additional step, right? So now we have a basically semifinal step for Open and then semis, and now the CrossFit Games. Was that a product of going from, okay, we've learned the lessons to a better filtering system to get to the CrossFit Games?
I think it's just also
definitely
more opportunity too. Like a lot of the divisions that, like the other 5 divisions that didn't get to go to Madison last year, like just kind of their season stopped after the Open. And
right.
I think this semifinal step is just a nice way where we're not quite ready to add it to the full games yet, but we want to give these guys and ladies another step where they can, prove their fitness and get crowned the fittest in their division and really stand out instead of just stopping at the Open.
Yeah, and I think people should understand too that the semifinal for those that aren't the 5 divisions not going to the Madison to compete, they will be crowning the fittest on earth, and there will be podium finishers. Understandingly, it won't be, immediate like it is at the CrossFit Games. There will be video review, and it'll take a little time to make sure it's validated. Um, but there is an opportunity to win the CrossFit Games and compete for the fittest on earth in every division. Obviously, we want that to be happening on the floor with everybody else. So, and that is the path in the future that will occur. Um, but adding that step is great, and especially for those going to Madison, adding the semifinal step is huge, because now you have 20 athletes going from the Open to another step, which we can now test and make sure that those 5 finalists that get to Madison are truly the fittest on earth. And I think we did a good job of that last year. But going from 3, well, I guess there was 4 scored events last year in the Open.
Mm-hmm.
Going from 4 scored events straight to the games is obviously not going to be the best process to finding the fittest on earth. So adding the semifinal step, and where I see that growing is every division will eventually have semifinal step into finals competition at the games. So I think it's a great opportunity, and it adds for those that are going to to Madison. You've got 20 people now being able to compete and being able to test those at a higher level, because as you know, the Open is programmed to be the first step to finding the athletes that go to the games.
Right.
But it's also programmed to be inclusive,
Mm-hmm.
so that the whole community can participate. So in a sense, you're not programming your most difficult tests in the Open. Like, you're leaving some stuff out that you won't want everybody to test. But now with the semifinals, and even the athletes that aren't going to Madison, that we have 20 athletes that we can test at a higher level to either produce the CrossFit Games champion or send those athletes to Madison.
I do like that additional step. I think it's vital, just as you said. It's that it's hard to take a inclusive and generic test of fitness and either crown the fittest or send the fittest to the game. So I really love that as an additional competition step for athletes, those divisions that will make it to Madison, and another crowning piece for those 5 divisions that will not make it to Madison. Now, I know we all would perfect world in a scenario that we've all vetted out is like everyone's there, right? Everyone's there competing in person, because that's the whole reason why this got started, is to get this division in the spotlight of which it deserves. Now, you guys don't have any impact on that, but what have you guys heard or seen that can help push that in that direction?
Well, one, I think is registration numbers. And each division doesn't need to be, they're not going to be equated. Short stature is not going to be compared to seated or upper extremity, but there definitely should be a growth this year in registration numbers. And I think if every division shows a growth, then that's really easy to go and show up to CrossFit leadership. Hey, look, every division grew by 20%. Now we're ready to give them a chance at the finals, wherever that is in Madison or in the future. So I do think registration growth is very, very important there. We're ready to produce that. We're ready to make it happen. And obviously, like, we learned a lot of lessons last year, but we can make it happen. We just need to see. I think CrossFit would like to see a growth in the numbers,
Yeah.
for sure.
I would say time.
Yeah.
Like, we have the mental capacity to adapt all these things, make the workouts fair, all that kind of jazz. But I think I think it's not just throwing more divisions into games.
Right.
It's
Right.
not. It's
Yeah.
not just like, hey, we'll just put them here. And you're like, where in the 3 seconds? It's
Yeah.
there. It's going to take some time, and I would probably say at least a couple of years of figuring out how best we could put these athletes into the games and not have it be this, like, again, sideshow. Like, hey,
Right.
we're going to put you guys a week before everyone else, and no one's going to watch you, and it's just going to be a feel good thing, and we're not really going to care about you, like, testing your fitness. I think it's going to take a few years of really figuring out where we can add in these divisions.
Yeah.
And I think Alec was right. I think a big part of that is knowing where the trajectory of the sport is for the adaptive divisions. Like, what does our growth pattern look like over a couple of years, and then that'll tell us where we can actually start jumping in on divisions.
Yeah, and you don't just want to toss something out there to toss something out there, because like anything, it's like we want to make sure is that we do it right, we do it well, it's fair, and it's a good competition, as opposed to, like Kevin, like you said, it's like we're just doing it for good feels instead of a good event. Um, One thing Dave talked about when he was releasing the new season is maybe eventually separating the age group weekends from the actual live competition to get them more of a bigger competition available. Um, and just thinking of that when you guys are talking about it is like, yeah, we want everybody to be together, but is there something to say is like maybe creating as it gets bigger and allowing more opportunity instead of a truncated 4 days of everyone together, 3 separate type of games weekends? Or would you guys rather see it all put together as one? Alec, I'll start with you.
You know, I think Kevin and I actually talked about this too. I I personally would like to see it all together. I understand I don't fully understand all of the logistics,
I was
finances,
gonna say, I feel
everything
it's
that
like
goes
more of
into
a
to running the event.
logistical decision
Right.
when they're talking
I
about
don't
separating
understand that all.
things. Yeah.
So I don't have the perspective that CrossFit leadership does to making these decisions. And I'm sure it's incredible to think about all these factors that go into it. But from a pure just community perspective of having everybody together,
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit is such a community-based fitness regimen and methodology that I would love it to stay together if possible. The flip side of that is to argue and say the separate event would be able to give CrossFit's full focus, full power, everything, all of the stuff that goes into it from scoring and signage and equipment teams and media focus, like an entire event
Right.
just where media are just focused on these adaptive athletes is incredible. It would be a great event, 100%. The flip side of that is, and I would argue, well, the one thing that the adaptive athletes love to do and the age groupers love to do too is be on the same floors as the individuals and the teams. They like to be walking around to the same venue at the same time and interact with the individual athletes and the individual athletes coaches. Like love to see Chris Henshaw
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
love to see, I want to go shake hands with Tia or all to be together and to doing that together. I think is something special that CrossFit has. There's the Olympics and the Paralympics, and they always do the Paralympics in the same venue as the Olympics. But Kevin has experience going to that, and he can tell you it doesn't have the same feel as the Olympics. It doesn't have the same crowd, and I don't know that people would go to watch age groupers and adaptive the same way that they would just go to watch the teams and individuals. And if adaptive are competing at the same time as team and individuals, you're going to see affiliate owners and trainers and supporters there going to watch adaptive competitions, and they may just be like, hey, coming up after this is individuals. Let's go early and watch this adaptive
Yeah.
heat, and then they get to see it, and then maybe that impacts them somehow, or they start an adaptive program in their gym or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go either way and we'll support it 100%. If I had my vote, I don't have all the factors and know everything that goes into it, but I would say let's keep them together if that is feasible.
Kevin?
Much on the same page. I really would love to have us all together and have them all on the same stage.
Yeah. That's definitely more the community vibe, right? That'd
be
that's
great.
what we're all part of.
I would love that. And I think to Alec's point, like I've been to a lot of like international competitions for like the road up to the Paralympics. But one of the major things that all those are missing, and what the Paralympics is missing, is coverage. And I think CrossFit could do a really great job with coverage there. And more so, like there was no coverage on the USA para powerlifting team at all. You couldn't watch anything.
Oh, wow.
We had a guy who competed and did very well, and no coverage on him at all. Couldn't watch him. And I think CrossFit would do a better job of that. I would say that we wouldn't even have to break it up into 3. I think we could break it up into 2 with individuals and teams and age groups and adaptive.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really cool way to kind of split those two things up if we had to. And I think we could. I mean, it'd be hard. I don't know. The problem is I don't know which one would be harder. Would it be harder to
right.
keep everyone in one spot and like give them a good go and actually find the fittest? Because if that's our goal, if our goal is to find the fittest, then the real question is which way can we find the fittest? Is it all together, or is it, in two different events?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's easier to try to jam all the divisions. I mean, eventually, hopefully, we have at least 8 divisions, maybe 11 divisions in the
Right.
CrossFit Games through the adaptive community. Like, where are we going to put them? And then if we can't put them there, like, having their own event with age group might be pretty cool. And if we have some really good coverage and it starts to build on itself the way the CrossFit Games did, which I'm sure it will, like, you watch some of these adaptive athletes move and get some coverage from CrossFit, like, there's no way this thing stays small. Not a chance.
Right.
And so which one's going to be the best way to find the fittest? And that's why I think we're just not ready to have everyone at the games yet, because I think it would just be kind of for doing its sake and not the actual proper process.
Yeah. As we look into the future of this sport with this division specifically, and we talked like, how do we advance this even further in either, 3-5 year, because it's not going to be just like, hey, next year we're going to fix all the things that we wanted to do. Like if we had the power, like, we could rub a magic lamp and we got 3 wishes. I bet we couldn't even still figure it out in 3 wishes only. But as you guys look at, what we learned in 2021, what we're looking forward to in 2020, how much impact do you guys see this being now part of the game season, it being in Madison, it is being covered and televised. Do you guys feel that there's going to be a bigger impact in this specific division because now it's showcasing what is actually out there for people that didn't think there was anything out there? I mean, I can't
100%.
imagine being in the position, Kevin, you've lived through this, man. Like, you've lived this on 2 sides of the
What?
spectrum. And but like, do you feel like that is can be a big inspiring element to those that think, hey, I thought this was it.
I mean,
but now you see this on TV.
We know it is. I mean, even in my gym personally, we've had a uptick in adaptive athletes that we have easily. But I mean, if we just go by pure numbers that we can show and like prove growth, we've run the WheelWOD Open, which is kind of something we run alongside the CrossFit Games Open every year, have previously. Where we adapt the workouts for adaptive athletes. I think the year before last, so the last Open we had before CrossFit had the adaptive division, I think we had 400-ish adaptive athletes total across all the divisions.
Okay.
And I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure we're right around 1,000 athletes in the Open last year.
Wow.
I mean, you're looking at doubling to tripling the amount of people who are participating in this within a year. And that may seem like small numbers, like a growth of 600 people, but that's 600 adaptive athletes who apparently had never thought they were capable of doing these things before. I mean, if you think like from there, someone saying like, oh, I'm missing a limb. That person's missing a limb the same way I'm missing a limb. I can do this stuff. And just think about when we first started the CrossFit and the CrossFit Games, where it was just a whole bunch of like mid 20-year-olds just throwing down and being meatheads. Yeah. And then they had these like 14 and 15-year-old kids come in and just start mollywhopping everyone.
Yeah.
And we turned into the sport that we have. I think the same thing is here. Okay. Now we not only get the people who are coming fresh out of a traumatic injury, like someone like myself, like coming out of an injury and being like, oh, I can do that. And I have an easy pathway to be part of this community that's awesome for this kind of stuff. It's also, someone who's born with a congenital impairment, who honestly is being told like probably 1,000 times over that they can't, they shouldn't, and they won't. Same thing I was told. You can't, you shouldn't, you won't. Mm-hmm. And then they watch these people and they realize I can, I will. And it's completely possible. So I think over the next couple of years, you're going to see not just an outgrowth in the sport, but outgrowth in the adaptive community and the general population as a whole. Like, people are going to stop being scared to be out in the world with a disability. They're going to be more outgoing, more comfortable in their own skin because they're capable and they're being told that they're capable. And I can't imagine something that could be more impactful on someone's life who's being told no their entire life than someone telling them, yes, you can, and I'll show you how.
I really like that. Alec, for you, what do you see this division with the CrossFit Games turning into, maybe even outside the realm of fitness?
Yeah, just like Kevin said, I think it's just an opportunity to see the potential of people with disabilities, in fitness and the top end. And to me, I'm sure to Kevin, doing the CrossFit Games and producing this is definitely a passion of ours. It's something we've wanted to do for a while. We'll do it to our best of our ability and keep making it better. But really, our passion is making CrossFit affiliates and even outside the CrossFit affiliate world more accessible to people with disabilities. And that's twofold. One is making sure the affiliate owners and the trainers are prepared to work with people with disabilities when they come in. They're confident to be able to work with people with disabilities, but then also letting know the community, letting know that they have a safe place to go work out, right? Like there's so much fear on both sides of the trainers not knowing how to work with somebody with a disability or being fearful of hurting them. And then there's this fear on the other side of the person coming in because they don't want to be a focus. They don't want to take away attention. They don't want to go somewhere where like they don't know if you are aware of how to work with you. So there's this fear on both sides, and competition is great. But what we really want to see is specifically in the CrossFit community, more affiliates being prepared to work with people with disabilities. We love to think that we are accessible to everybody and anybody, right? Like I think every affiliate owner, if you ask them, they would say, "Oh yeah, like anybody can come into our door and we're ready to work with you. We can work with a grandma, a collegiate wrestler,
Right.
somebody who's a large body athlete." But really, most affiliates are not prepared because they don't have the training to work with people with disabilities. And so that's our real big mission, is to grow that. In a perfect world, every CrossFit affiliate would be prepared to work with somebody with a disability of a variety of disabilities, and they are completely accessible to everybody that walks or rolls in their door. So really, I mean, that's the true mission. Um, Kevin and I were at a seminar in San Antonio. There was a guy that came. He was a bilateral above the knee amputee, and just looking at him, you're like, okay, this guy is an athlete. Like he's a stud. And we just kept talking to him. He's not a CrossFitter. He just does traditional bodybuilding, fitness stuff. And Kevin was like salivating. He's like, okay, we need to get you in the open. We need to get you. He's like, okay, you're not in my division, so I'll help you. We need to get you in the open. We need to get you competing in the games. Have you ever heard of the open?
Here's the cool thing.
We
He's
did a
actually going to be
workout.
in.
Oh, is he really?
I actually talked to I just talked to the gym owner. He's been training with them over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So,
at lunchtime, we did a workout, and we're just like, hey, I don't care if you're eating, come over here. You're going to work out with us. You're going to do a workout with us. So made him do a workout. He's like, oh, that was different. We're like, okay, just get used to it. It's going to be like,
cool. Really cool. And what you guys are talking about is that you guys do run seminars for specifically the adaptive community.
Yes, run adaptive and inclusive trainer course, which used to be the CrossFit specialty course, adaptive training. Okay. And then, in 2019, the specialty courses became preferred courses. Everybody became independent. So, like weightlifting became Bergner Strength. Right. We created Adaptive Training Academy to keep running and producing that education for the community. We still do that to this day. So do that in seminars and also in an online course format. Okay. So we don't produce as many seminars right now as we used to. We'll be ramping that up a little bit more in 2022. But so if somebody's interested, if they're an affiliate owner is listening or trainer, you can check us out at ata.fit and get certified in adaptive and inclusive training. It gives you a broad kind of general understanding of adaptive and inclusive fitness, sort of like your L1 gives you enough tools to be dangerous enough to be a CrossFit trainer, but you still need to cut your teeth in the gym and, get hands-on and practice that craft for sure.
Well, listen, guys, I think it's all going in a great direction. I think it's very exciting to see how far we came in just a year of it being in the actual season. I'm excited to where it's going to go in the future. I know, all of us always take, lessons learned into, things that we can always make better. And I think that the new season format is another step in the right direction. And my only hope is that, Kevin, like you were talking about, is that we can get this into more eyes on this community for everyone, right? Not just, disabilities, able bodies, just that this word gets out is like, this thing is growing and it's growing in a massive way. And it's only going to get better the more people we have involved with that. And those are the things I'm really looking forward to doing this year and the years to come. But I want to thank both you guys for coming on the show and just sharing your experience, your involvement, and all the things we're looking forward to the game season. And hey, starting in February, we get to do it all over again. So Alec, thank you. Kevin, as always, pleasure to see you.
Chase, thanks for the opportunity to
Yeah,
come on
thank
and
you
talk,
so much.
man.
Absolutely, guys. You guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you guys next time.